Welcome back to New Persuasive Words. I'm Scott Jones.
And I am Bill Bohr.
Bill, I remember when we used to sit in the government yard in Trenchtown. Oba observing the hypocrites, yeah. Mingle with the good people we meet.
And for the record, I shot the sheriff, but I did not shoot the deputy.
I mean, why stop there? See, don't do it half-ass. That's what I'm saying. You know what I mean? This is Elon Musk is shooting the sheriff, the deputy, the deputy secretary, the dog catcher, the dog. Fire them all. Get rid of everybody.
Yeah. I talked to my the guy who does my taxes. I said, okay, so is there still an IRS to send this to? And he said, well, I think so.
This is good. I mean, like, it's possible.
It's possible.
I mean, what if it slows down people's tax returns? That's the real stuff you care about, right? On some level. I mean, if the tax returns don't come in on time.
Do I still sound okay? I hit a button. Am I good?
You're good.
All right. Very good.
Don't hit the button.
It was an accident.
Remember in Lost? Did you see? You never watched Lost, did you?
No, I never got
it. It's so great. You should watch it. It's still.
It's funny. My staff at the time, had a young staff. They go, "Would you please watch Lost and then explain it to us?"
You wouldn't have been able to explain it. You wouldn't have. Nobody could explain that. Well, I mean, it was. I'll tell you what. I loved that show. The ending was less than satisfying, but it's still all right. I mean, but they had to push this button, and the idea was like if they didn't push the button every 75 or 80 minutes, that this electromagnetic storm would like mess up the whole world. And so it was this. There were some really great philosophical debates around evidence and faith, and it was just great. It was a great show. I mean, it was sort of one of the early big network serial dramas.
Were you an X-Files person?
I was on and off. I was
a big X-Files fan, but periodically they changed the mythology. Like it was like
right, reboot.
They had you had one kind of wait a minute, I thought this was that, and I heard some people that were the critical of Lost for the same reason, that somehow they lost the maybe they lost their initial philosophical string, and maybe sometimes it's just you get different showrunners, right? Sometimes
I don't think they ever they didn't really change. I mean, it got strange. It got great, and then I don't know. I loved it till the end. I actually thought Lost was. I thought the ending was less than satisfying, but that's fine. It doesn't. I hate when people. I think there are a lot of people that dismiss a show's quality based on maybe they didn't end the thing the right way, and I just take away.
It's kind of like certainly
Game of Thrones. Yeah,
right. And MASH lasted. Now this is before many of our listeners' time, but MASH lasted a season or two too long. That's sometimes what happens, right?
It's one of the classic finales of all time, though. Television.
Yeah. No, I think they recovered for the finale, right? But I think, it's not. Some things they lose their edge. We've been watching some of the SNL documentaries, and they did one called "The Weird Season" about when Lorne Michaels came back. It's just interesting to see behind the screen a little bit the creative process, and the fact is we've all watched something and said, I could make this. I'm funnier than this.
I'm sure half of our audience says that every episode.
Right. But you don't quite know what goes into making of the sausage, right?
Do you know Larry David on Saturday Night Live? Like that whole episode where George gets in the big altercation with the boss and everything, and just shows back up to work like nothing happened. That really happened. Larry David, like they weren't using any of his sketches. Like they would do well in the read through, and then they would weed them out. And finally, he just said it wasn't Lorne Michaels, it was the other guy that was running at the time, and Larry David was like, "This show sucks. It's shit," and he just cursed the guy out and walked out. And the guy that played Kenny Kramer, the guy that Kramer was based on, said, "Just show up Monday." And Larry David showed up Monday for work, and he stayed on the show. It worked.
What is it? Office Space, where they keep the guy's fired. They keep moving his desk. Remember that movie?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's got a cult
That's what
classic.
I'm gonna do to you, but I'm just gonna keep moving your microphone until you're out of the shot. They're just out of the shot. Well, Bill, I'm so much is going on. I mean, it's Steve Bannon, my man, said it.
By the way, your man. Why did your man make the Nazi salute the other day? At
Look,
CPAC.
all the yacht rock guys do that. It's a yacht
Yeah.
rock thing. It's not Nazis. It's
I've never seen Michael McDonald do that. I just want you to know. I've
you
never
haven't
seen.
watched carefully enough.
No.
He said muscle velocity. He was famous for saying in 2016. Back then, he said our opponent, our adversary is not the Democrats, it's the press. And we've just got to keep them throwing things at muzzle velocity so that they can't. And that's just what's going on, right? I mean, this is you can't keep up with it. It is absolutely surreal. It's surreal. It's unreal. It's amazing. These cabinet meetings where it's fantastic.
Yeah, you like it. It's good TV. You like that, right?
It's great television. It's again, it kills Saturday Night Live because how can you satire this stuff? Right. Like, tell me how you make this funnier than it is.
But wait, one other thing, we'd be amiss not to mention the passing of Gene Hackman.
Gene Hackman and his wife.
Which
they're 31 years apart.
Yeah. Sad. I've never seen Gene Hackman give a bad performance.
No.
Yeah, I was too young. I mean, when French Connection, I was too young to watch that. But went back and watched it.
Popeye Doyle.
Yeah, but he even like in movies that were like Postcards from the Edge, which was an okay movie, he has a little part in it, and it's the only part of the movie I remember. I mean, he has one scene as a director. It's amazing. And The Replacements. What a great, just he just was great. Uncredited scene in Young Frankenstein, one of my favorite scenes in the whole movie. The Unforgiven. Yeah, the Hoosiers was great.
Unforgiven was one of the early sort of kind of postmodern westerns where you just didn't know who the good guy was and who the bad guy was.
On purpose. Yeah, he was amazing in that. In the Royal Tenenbaums, I looked at that's class. So he,
and we have from Gary Baumgarten of a professional journalist whose clubhouse room I frequent every day when I can at 5:00, the Critical Thinking Forum. He reminds us, coming in from Facebook, Under Fire and Under Suspicion were amazing performances.
Absolutely. Again, I don't. A movie can be even mediocre, but he never gave a bad performance. I think that's a pretty remarkable legacy. So,
Crimson Tide again. I love that movie. I watched that multiple times. I like submarine movies.
Yeah.
By the way, for those of you who are listening for the first time, we broadcast this live on Facebook and YouTube. And so periodically we do get comments. So we sometimes will post them and respond to them. So if you're wondering how we're fielding someone august like Gary Baumgarten, it's because they're coming through in the live stream.
Or are you worried that we actually are hearing voices, which that may be true as well.
That's always true. I hear Steve Bannon's voice sometimes.
I'm afraid you do.
I put on that second shirt when I hear it.
Yeah, but you're
that's my man.
I know. Yeah, so
it's the moral voice of the MAGA movement, buddy.
Well, now I might be able to affirm that.
Yeah, I mean, it's not hard. It's not hard.
Well, speaking of MAGA, we were inspired by, again, as we often are, Ezra Klein. I'm not sure there's anybody smarter out there, making commentary right now.
I mean, as far as daily quality of great stuff, I mean, he has great guests. Yeah, it's pretty impressive.
Yeah, it is. So, he made a comment the other day, again, well, why don't you read the excerpt? You sent it to me.
I will read the excerpt. Yeah. This was from, I think, as we're recording the most recent episode where he had a guest on, the name is escaping me, but the guy was a former CIA media analyst. So, the president would say, how am I doing in Spain? And, he was the guy, well, here's what the media is saying, here's what the reporters are saying and things like that. So he wrote a book about populist revolt in media and
Mhm.
stuff. And it was a great conversation. And
It was from
as
Tuesday. So
this
yeah.
is from Tuesday, yeah. So Ezra Klein says this, and they were talking about just the differences of the Obama era to the Trump era. And he says, I think there are seasons to the way we understand the world. Certainly in the Obama era, we were in a season of empirics and technocracy. And I don't mean that just in terms of the reports people produced and the way they argued. I also mean it in the terms of the aesthetic. This is a point my colleague Ross Douthat has made, but it's also something that I've been thinking about. It has felt to me for some time that we're re-entering a slightly more mythic turn of the wheel. I think you see it in the popularity of Catholicism with its pomp and its circumstance and the strangeness of Greek Orthodoxy, the return of astrology as a major force. And something about Trump ended up fitting that for a lot of people, at least. I'm not saying that I had this particular interpretation of him, but the degree to which, even within his own movement, he's almost like the grand Ayatollah of national conservatism. That even the people who like him don't view him as a precise technical policy thinker. They view him as somebody with a kind of intuitive, almost spiritual connection to the country that they see him leading and the people they see him representing. And with the revolving of all these other powerful figures like Musk and so on, it wasn't just his show anymore. He became like this demigod-like or pope-like figure presiding over a movement.
Yeah.
I think that's a great, and the guest says so. He says, I think it's a great observation. The guest quite resonated with it. And I do too. I think it's absolutely correct.
Yeah. And my response to you, maybe, you know, this is MAGA's version of Rastafarianism without the pot or the good music.
Well, I'm sure there's some pot.
Yeah, I'm sure there's
behind closed doors.
I think there's probably high quality cocaine if Don Jr. is any indication of it. But no, but there's a sense where there's something really helpful. Like, okay, how Haile Selassie became a messianic figure, a practicing Christian who wouldn't necessarily have didn't invite himself to become a leader of a religion, but we've seen it even, you know, when he ran in 2016, the idea of people saying, you know, if he himself, if I shot somebody in broad daylight on Fifth Avenue, I would get free. And apparently that is the case. That's he you know, he obviously has committed crimes, you know, if the judicial system means anything at all anymore, which that might be an open issue as well. But it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that his own personal morality when it came to people who you know, had purity rings, I'm sure in their youth groups, right? There, you know, can you stop and think about that? There are millions of people that had purity rings who voted for Donald Trump. That boggles the mind. But this kind of idea of this mystic, and then you've got Jordan Peterson and his you know, whatever he's doing up there, and the attraction to that.
Hey, I've turned around on Peterson, man. Listen to Bill Maher's last podcast with him.
But you know, I'm
turned around a little bit.
I'm talking about the mythical constructs. It's certainly your guru, Steve Bannon, talks in mystical, you know, language in terms of what's going on, and that in some levels kind of makes it begins to explain the appeal, particularly as certain aspects of evangelicalism has become tribal. It has nothing actually to do with the four spiritual laws or Billy Graham kind of evangelism or even going to church. But this kind of, it makes sense that there's the spiritual connection. I mean, I know a lot of people.
Bill, do you think with the impatience of Gen Z and the emerging generation, we're gonna have to come up with the 2.5 spiritual laws? I don't think four's. I think four's.
Well, we can't even call them laws anymore. What would we call them?
Stricture. No, you know.
I don't know what you would call them, but
don't call them the regulations. They'll be cut.
Not call them regulations. No, not the 4 regulations. Yeah.
No.
Yeah, you know, it'll be interesting to see when Elon Musk gets his hand on the 10 Commandments, what he might end up doing with that. I know a couple that he will take out, like most of them, like all of
Yeah.
them. But at any rate, so I think I found that really interesting because
I mean, I just said to Moses, I just simply said, what commandments did you write today? And puts it in an email. That was my first ever attempt at
it was
a
not
bust.
bad. That's not your South African um, on drugs is not bad.
Yeah, I'm working. I'm gonna workshop it. I'll workshop it.
Yeah, that's
It
pretty
works.
good. So, I mean, I think you and I've talked again that um, that traditional liberalism of even progressivism isn't able to wrap its mind around this, and I think that might be even the traditional press and things try. They keep taking the bait. That's what's they keep playing right into everything, and
This is Lucy with the football, and the press is
yeah,
Charlie Brown.
but it's hard to put your arms around a mystical allegiance, and also it's interesting once you let that out of the bag. I mean, I just was reading Holland. My eyes better, so I can read in a book again. And I read Holland's chapter on the apocalyptic and the Taborites and things like that, and also Luther kind of wanting to try to get the toothpaste back into the tube, right? But he couldn't do it with all the revolution, the peasants revolt, multiple peasants revolts, the Anabaptists and things like that. So there's a sense where there's you unleash
Don't give Elon Musk Luther on the pen. Don't give him any ideas.
but you unleash this kind of there's the spirit, right? We live in a spiritual age, so you just watch people at the rallies, and it's funny. It's like, I mean, I have high school friends. Occasionally, I don't spend a lot of time on social media anymore, but I dip my toe occasionally to see what they're saying, and it's like they've gotten the Jehovah Witness talking points, but now it's coming from the MAGA thing. They're actually repeating false things they've heard and as justifying everything he's
No
done.
respect about the witnesses. I was walking through the subway station the other day, and I think it was the subway station. The city hall stop, and the witnesses were out. And man, oh no, it wasn't the subway station. It was outside in the cold. It was on 40th Street, and the witnesses are out, and they've got their thing. And do you want a free Bible study? And there's this stunning woman. I mean, she's just a lovely woman, put together, well dressed, and she's out there. It's freezing out, and I'm thinking, what religious conviction? I mean, first off, they've drawn this woman in. I mean, I guess if you're that cute, you figure you're going to be in 144,000, right? I mean, you just got to figure.
Well, I think they've adjusted that number, but anyway.
Yeah, I mean, whatever the number is, she's cute. She would make any red carpet, especially if the red carpet is red in the blood of the martyrs. But she's sitting out there canvassing for the witnesses, and I thought, first off, you get this woman, and she could be doing anything, and then they're out there in the cold, and everyone kind of gives them a look, kind of askance, and they're not super respected. That's religious conviction I respect, Bill.
Oh yeah, sure. No, absolutely. Yeah.
But I also respect guys that wear two shirts.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I know. Yeah.
So don't use me as a metric of
that may not be.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. My favorite two Jehovah's Witnesses were two guys in Germantown when my one son lived there, and I would babysit my grandson, and I'd walk by them all the time, and they were kind of two older guys. Just late, they were sitting on the bench. They had the material kind of out, and we always say hi to each other. Not once did they ever offer me any of it. They were kind of, that's my style of proselytizing.
I always think, don't you want me on the team? Like, I hate that when people don't knock on my door or don't try to evangelize me. I want to be wanted.
Yeah, maybe they're, well, I'm sorry you're not getting more proselytizing.
I know. I love being proselytized. Yeah. So this is what Klein is getting at here, I think, is salient and true to our times. And you look at the way, for instance, J.D. Vance talks about America.
Oh yeah,
it's an ethno state. There's a destiny. It belongs to certain people.
blood and
Yeah.
soil.
Now I don't know if his wife is one of those people, but I guess he makes exemptions for her.
Oh yeah,
But
that's
there is this, it's ethnic, bordering on the spiritual connection to the land, right? This is
mhm.
blood, soil. I mean, it's what we would classically call paganism, right? I mean,
Right.
this
No,
is
absolutely. Yeah.
this is Greek and Roman mythology. This is, and Norse mythology. This is pre-modern paganism. But it's this, and Trump, I mean, with the, one of the things in that Ezra Klein podcast, they did talk about the guy who his guest was Cuban, kind of older guy, so he'd lived in
Yeah.
Cuba in tough times. He said, "Look, I grew up in Cuba, and when you hear gunshots, what you do is you hit the deck and just hope. You just hope." And he says, that Trump had the presence of mind after he got shot to not hit the deck and to stand and go fight, and that was a religious moment for people, right? I mean, I think that was one of
Right.
the
No,
most
people.
determinative political, but and certainly in the campaign, and in my recollection, one of the most remarkable moments of political theater. Well, not theater's not the right word, because it's not staged. I mean, this is whatever he was thinking. I would, that
Political
moment,
instinct.
yeah, and
Yeah.
his
Pure.
instant, and the spiritual connection. I think he's a cipher. He's a in the way that something. As I was right, in the way the Pope embodies, is the symbolic embodiment of the deposit of teaching and mystery of the church.
Right.
Trump is that for the movement, right? And he's
Yeah.
right. It doesn't matter. What's interesting is sort of the utter rejection of certain capitalist free market norms, and maybe it's just it lines up with people's frustration with neoliberalism and feeling economically out to dry. But just Trump saying tariffs are great, free markets aren't that great, and all these freedmen consider all the yeah, tariffs are great. You hear these people, these Reaganites. I mean, gosh, I was in the clubhouse room. My friend Gary, I don't know if he's still tuned in. We were in there, and man, these Russian apologists, and how it was a good idea not to join in, not to vote no on the condemnation of the UN of the Russian invasion. These guys, I said in the room, I said Ronald Reagan would be rolling over in his grave. But the Pope said, I mean, there's this, it's ex cathedra, right? The ex cathedra pronouncement has been that we are philo Russians, philo Ruski. I don't know. This is this is so it is, but this mythical connection, and I think it is important to realize for Democrats, for liberals, for leftists, for progressives, because every military strategist tells you, right, the danger of fighting the last war,
Right.
and you're always ready for the way the last conflict was undertaken, and we are. I mean, you listen to the left, the smart left, the smart ones that remain. It is technocratic. He's right. It is. There is a sort of cool-eyed detachment, and I don't know that the left is equipped the way it was in the civil rights movement. Right, they could produce a Martin Luther King who could just weave civil religious discourse. Right, he could talk about the Hebrew Bible, the founding fathers, Lincoln, Enlightenment stuff. He could knit that all in together to say that it's not that you want to trash the country, it's that the country's not living up to its own best angels and its own best ideals. I don't think we have that on the left.
Yeah, because
And we need it right now.
Yeah, this isn't really about I mean, what Trump is offering, not living up to any ideals. It's not. There's no real. You're right. There's no ideology there. I'm not sure. Um, I mean, for some people, make America great again is make it whiter again. For some people, I guess it apparently means not caring for poor people, right? Apparently, it means firing disabled veterans. At least that's what it meant last week. So there's not. You're right. It's kind of what he says and then suddenly everyone gets the line.
But there is this sense, though, right? There is this sense that we're a poor country now.
Oh, that's funny.
Right?
Yeah, right.
That we're not the wealthiest country in the world, and everyone's ripping us off, and we're disadvantaged all the time. Right. And it's interesting. Jonah Goldberg's just said that he thinks like a mob boss. And what does a mob boss do? A mob boss is tough. It is demeaning oftentimes to the people in his own organization, his so-called allies, but respects the other mob bosses, right?
Right.
Their territory, right? So Putin, he's another mob boss of a different area. So you got to respect him. Or Xi, he runs the Southeast Asian mob. So you beat your NATO allies over the head, like in Untouchables, when he takes the baseball bat and he beats the guy to the table. That's what you do to Germany or Denmark or Great Britain. Well, meanwhile, you show this strange deferential respect to the other dons. I mean, forgive the metaphor.
Yeah, no, I think that's not a bad way to think about it. And and again, this fighting this other battle. I mean, I was part of a meeting the other day of people who really who care, who want to try to help people who are going to be affected by this. But one of the problems with some of their own, they can't get out of their own way with their own fears and their own issues. And, I there were some people whose strategy was for us to get new amendments, symbolic amendments passed in the Vermont legislature. Like that is going to do anything, right? That we say these things kind of comfort. It's almost like it's okay. This is our cookies and milk. We're gonna pass a piece of legislature that doesn't matter, but it makes us feel like we're still relevant. Where I was interested in the conversation because how are we going to help people who no longer can afford their insulin? There was a person who was brought to this country, given protected status, who now needs a heart surgery, and she may not be able to have it. She's 20-year-old. So I'm concerned about people whose health are going to be in jeopardy, who maybe they're afraid to go to their jobs now, and how they feed their children. I've been in a village in Guatemala where a child died the week before we got there from something I could have gone down to the local pharmacy and bought over the counter to save this child's life. And the fact that we had a kid die of measles last week. The fact that kind of stuff is about to happen in this country. That's the thing I want to be involved with. But it's a moving target. It's a fire hose. It's chase the.
But see, even your criticisms, do you hear? Which I'll agree with. Do you hear the sort of this policy and this and this? Here's the practical outworking of this, and this is. It's still on the level of. I mean, it's. I think that it's still somehow it's not his. What Trump offers is not weediness, right? It's this sort of epic story of the return of American greatness, of us settling our scores with the world, of our finally not getting ripped off anymore, of this sense in which it's okay to be proud of a certain kind of identity, right? It's identity politics.
It's on
an extremist, right? I mean, this is
the wokeness of the right.
Yeah, exactly. It's remarkable, but it's not. So I mean, I think when you point out, well, here's the practical people that are getting hurt, it just doesn't
matter.
It doesn't. You can't dance to it.
No, it doesn't matter. Like, I mean that. I see. Yeah, I saw for the first time in a long while those filing for unemployment went up. Yeah. So I mean, but you're right. I mean, the things that the meat and potatoes politics of the yesteryear are gone, and again, how do you? Part of my practical thing is I don't want people dying of treatable conditions in my parish area. So as a pastor,
Bill, I think the moral courage of not wanting people to die of treatable conditions, you're on the edge out there. I mean, you really, I ain't gonna lie, because at least half the country's like,
have
some treatable conditions.
Yeah, I don't feel any ennoblement by doing that. It's called being a Christian. But again, I'm with you on this. I think what I find is, the Ezra Klein article resonates with me. It being, you and I, as students of church history and religious history, it allows us, oh yeah, this makes sense. We see this all over the place. It also is kind of how you get, I mean, it's how also modern dictators, authoritarians, kind of are able to hold, whether it's Fidel Castro or Mussolini or whoever, or the Ayatollah, right? There's a legit.
if that was my Jeopardy category, if the answer was the Ayatollah, Fidel Castro, Mussolini, what would the question would be? Who are three people who have read more books than Donald Trump?
You could add Haile Selassie to that too.
Yeah, you could.
I'm sure you could. So,
by the way, we have another comment from the field here. Gary Baumgarten of New Jersey, great journalist, says when we have a flu pandemic next year, for lack of a viable vaccine, some of those folks may change their perspective. What think you, Bill? You think they'll change?
I hope so, Gary. Although I buried people during, I buried non-vaxxers during COVID, and it didn't seem to change their families' opinion. So
we lost a good friend.
We lost a good friend because of that. Yeah. And my hope would be that if he had a chance to rethink that, he would, but he doesn't, and neither does his family. So, at any rate, yeah, I hope so. I hope, or you start seeing veterans who gave a limb of their life, and literally gave a limb, and who are now unemployed. You would hope that would change people, but I'm not convinced. I'm not. It's an interesting thing. What changes religious zealousness, or what changes
conversion, man?
Your conversion.
You got to tell a better story. I mean, this
conversion, or I think of Sabbatai Levi, or total disillusionment.
Yeah, disillusionment. But I mean, I think this is the postmodern truth, right? But we've been, a lot of people smarter than you and I, small as that group is, has said, in the postmodern, well, maybe this is always true, right? But the one who tells the best story wins. And Trump right now, the MAGA movement it tells a story. It tells a powerful story, and I think this could be the white man's Rastafarianism, as you pointed out. But Bill, somebody has said there's something called the greatest story ever told, and maybe we need a little more of that.
Amen.
The beat goes on.